Got something on my mind, something on the brother's mind. You know, I found interesting. I was watching the news. Actually, I was reading through the news, and I saw this issue with the migrants and how New York City police are supposed to be cracking down on them harder and so on and so forth. But then I started thinking, and then I remember in the movie, The Gangs of New York, when they had what's called the draft wars, where you had a lot of the Irish immigrants who had settled here in New York City, pretty much in the area where we teach at, Lower Manhattan. Lower Manhattan is very historical for protests and riots and so on and so forth. Very famous in the Union Square area and also Washington Square Park down in the Village. Very famous for riots, but they had a period of time called the draft wars where Irish white Americans were angry at the fact that they had to be drafted to fight in the Civil War, and rich, privileged whites could buy their free way out of the war, pay for their sons not to fight in the war. And the Irish were mad because they figured they were dying for ninjas, if you know what I mean, the N-word. And they burned down black orphanages, hung and lynched people, and they attacked certain whites as well. But it was a rough time in American history, and Lincoln, he was shaking in his boots. Just like now, America is on her last leg and trembles in fear. But, you know, these are very, very strange times. But to those who are enlightened in the spirit of Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, that's the Most High in Christ, it's not too strange for us because we know what's going on. We know what's going on. But the average joker who believes in America and who believes in the lies and that things are going to bounce back, you know, he's confused and stupid. He's confused and emotional. He's confused and totally lost that God's judgment and God's ways are weighing heavily in this country. And I love it. And you brothers and sisters who are in the spirit of the Most High, you love it too. Yeah, you love it too. We love it. And as time go on, we're going to see more judgments coming from the Most High. We're going to see more examples of anarchy, which is open or let loose. The anarchy and the death and destruction is let loose by the Most High. You know that, those of you who are knowledgeable in the spirit of the Most High. Let me show you something real quick in regards to what I'm talking about. I'm not going to be very long. I'm it's my lunch break or break. But let me show you something real quick. I don't know if you can see this. I might have to make it bigger for you. Let's see. It says draft riots of 1863. See that? Now, the Civil War was from 1861 to 1865, I believe. But at this point, Lincoln was running out of soldiers. He was in dire need of soldiers. So he had another 2 years ago in regards to the Civil War. It says major 4-day eruption of violence in New York City resulted from deep worker discontent with the inequalities of, I can't see this damn thing, conscription during the U.S. Civil War. Although laboring people in general supported the Northern war effort, they had no voice in Republican policy and occasionally deserted from the army or refused reenlistment because of their low wages, often less than $500 a year. They were particularly antagonized by the federal provision allowing more influent drafts to buy their way out of the federal army for $300. See, the Irish found that unfair. Why should they die? And the rich who can afford to buy their way out of the war, not fight. Same thing today. Then they say, why do the poor go to war and die and the rich They lay comfortably in their homes and they make money. Meanwhile, the poor die every day. So they recognize these things. Very important part of history. But here's the thing. Here's the kicker. I want to show you this. Here's the kicker. You had another period later during World War II where you had what was called the Zoot Suit Wars. And guess who was involved in the Zoot Suit Wars? They show you this in movies too. Forgot the name of the movie. I think it's called American Violence. I can't remember what it's called. Where whites here were beating the hell out of blacks and Mexicans. Blacks and Mexicans. Then fast forward to today's time. You have California apologizing for the Zoot Suit Wars. So you had the draft wars in 1863. And in 1943, I think it said, you had what was called the Zoot Suit Wars. You understand? So, I mean, it seems like history is repeating itself all over again. Now you have this situation with the migrants, and that's turning into a civil war in America, a potential civil war in America, where the country is divided right against left, Republicans against Democrats, liberals against conservatives, and you just see the anger and the fear and at the same time, the weakness of America and the world is watching this and laughing. They're watching and laughing at America. They're watching and laughing at how weak and pathetic this country is becoming. But check this out. I found this very interesting, considering the times we're experiencing now. Check this out.
It's the summer of 1943. Young men are being drafted into World War II. Swing music fills the clubs and couples dance to the limp and the jitterbug. And zoot suits are all the rage, mostly being worn by black and Latino men in working class neighborhoods across the country with their big shoulders.
Black and Latino men. Black and Latino men. Get it? Yet, blacks and Latinos think they're different from each other, but it's the same enemy attacking black and Latino so-called men, women, and children. Coming through the border is what? Blacks and Latinos, mainly Latinos, storming through an open border. And guess who's mad? So-called Europeans, so-called white people. Seems strange? You're witnessing history, and this was on my mind. Check it out.
Sprawling lapels and peg-leg pants, the look is unmistakable. The style was born in Harlem. But on the West Coast, Mexican Americans made it their own. Chicanos who wore the zoot suits were called pachucos. But the suits were heavy on fabric, and because of the Second World War, there was a rationing of wool and other materials.
We're going to tighten our belts another notch.
So there was an issue with the war in this time. They were rationing the clothes or the material needed for soldiers in their uniforms. They needed to cut back on the zoot suits, and too many Negroes and Latinos were using material for zoot suits, and this affected the mindset of so-called Europeans. This was a problem for so-called Europeans. This was a problem. So in 1863, 2 years prior to the end of the Civil War, they had an issue there. Men were running out or running from the war. They were in the act of AWOL because they weren't being paid enough. And in my opinion, they didn't think it was right to die for ninjas. So they were bailing out, and there was a shortage of soldiers in the 1800s, 1863. So they had to create a draft, and the draft was pulling in Irish immigrants who were starving in their country and came to this country. Watch the movie The Gangs of New York. Watch the movie The Godfather, the opening scene of The Godfather. You had immigrants coming from all over the world coming to Babylon because Babylon is the greatest country in the world as far as opportunity in their minds. So the Irish didn't take they didn't take a liking to this, and they started attacking, guess who? So-called blacks. During the Zoot Wars, who were they attacking? Latinos mainly and blacks. In 2024, what's the problem? So-called Latinos, the migrants, a portion of blacks, they are a problem at the border. And once again, you're going to see possibly some attacks on the migrants because it's heating up. Taxpayers are tired of giving their money to the migrants. Taxpayers are tired of seeing their people, their veterans on the streets, whereas migrants are being coddled, taken care of, and breaking the laws, the same laws where if you broke those laws, you would end up in jail. So they tired. They tired of it. and the world is watching this and they saying, this has got to be a joke. This has got to be a joke. The world is seeing this. You understand? And at the same time, America is throwing money to the Ukraine. America is throwing money to the war with Hamas and the so-called Israelis. America is throwing money into war because war is big business. War is big business. And if you can keep the migrants coming over and over, and give them the right to vote and put them in your military and fill the ranks, that's beneficial for white America or the white American power structure, because now you're creating Democratic votes and you can keep the Democrats in power forever and ever if they can pull this off. That's why Trump is vowing to create the biggest roundup and gathering of illegals and shipping them back if he gets into office. But the Bible is so awesome, man. The Bible says there is no new thing under the sun. And we're seeing the same thing, not exactly, but the same thing unfolding all over again. So during the time of the Zoot Wars, they needed material. And he was tired of seeing these ninjas, white sailors and citizens and servicemen. They were tired of seeing these ninjas and Mexicans wearing these odd-looking suits. Meanwhile, soldiers needed to fight Hitler in Europe. Check it out again.
And other materials.
We're going to tighten our belts another notch for war.
At the time, many people saw those who wore zoot suits during the war as un-American. Then in June 1943, the riot.
Did you hear that? It's un-American to wear these suits. This is when the white man had great pride. He had pride in his army, his military. His children were quick to join the military. They were proud. You don't have that now. America is in her weakest state. The patriot is a dying breed. Only these old dinosaurs is pushing the patriotic movement now, but it's dying. America's values, it's old school values like this no longer exist. That the baseball, hot dogs, and apple pies. In this case, the swinging Joe DiMaggio. Prior to that, the Babe Ruths. Then we go on into the 50s and 60s. You had the Hank Aaron coming to pass. Then the Vietnam War. America, love it or leave it. Then the protesters pushing back. The flower children. This country has been through many up and downs. Many up and downs. And it's all the Most High, because this final up and down is going to be the destruction of America. That's right. So, Mike. It's going to be the destruction of America. But this is very fascinating, in my opinion, though. Fascinating. Check it out.
Riots broke out. White uniformed servicemen walked the streets of Los Angeles, attacking and beating up Latino, Black, and Filipino men wearing the zoot suits. Those racist mobs would eventually include off-duty police officers and plain old civilians, and it went on for a week.
Now, not just the citizens, off-duty policemen. Now, I want to show you a clip from the movie Gangs of New York, because I found this strange, man. And they put this clip in the movie. It went through real fast when you watch the movie The Gangs of New York. Real fast. Watch this.
Upstairs. Get the women upstairs.
So now you see citizens coming through the door, but watch carefully. Firemen. Firemen. When you watch those old, well, I'm showing my age, but used to have the Bowery Boys, those old Humphrey Bogart movies. The old classics, the old classic gangster movies. When you watch the old gangster movies, or even Abbott and Costello, the one when they were living in an apartment building, who were the cops mainly? Irishmen. Who were the firemen? Irishmen. Even during slavery, the Irish were indentured slaves, but they could buy their freedom, or they only had to serve slavery, but a different level of slavery compared to our slavery for a certain amount of time. So who were the overseers mainly during slavery? Irish. The patrolmen were Irish. The cops were Irish. And in the movie The Gangs of New York, you see firemen who are also Irish stormtrooping through rich, well-off white folks. And they mad as hell because they are being drafted into the war. And they figuring, why should I fight a war and I'm poor for the ninjas? Why should I do that? Why should I do that? And today, so-called whites feel, why should I pay taxes for Latinos, for Hispanics, for Mexicans, from people from El Salvador, for people from Peru? Then on another level, so-called Haitians and Africans. Why should they pay for that? So you think they're not considering taking up arms? You think they're not considering fighting back? This is the America we know today. This is the America we see today. This is the reality that a lot of you don't want to see. There are thousands and thousands of things to question. You understand? There are thousands and thousands of things to think on. But overall, religion is not holding back the floodgates of the Most High's judgment. The Most High doesn't believe in religion. The Most High believes in the Holy Scriptures. But I want you to see that. I'm not going to keep it long because I don't want to get a flag. But I want you to look at this. Look at this.
From 18th Precinct, the mob are sacking houses 27th Street and 7th Avenue. We have no force to send. From 16th Precinct.
Listen closely, because listen, I want you to listen closely with the message, the message they are sending over in regards to the riots. Check it out.
All the stores are closing on 8th Avenue from fear of the mob in 17th Street.
Irish.
From 4th, the rioters are attacking colored boarding houses, robbing them.
Colored boarding houses. When you look up the history on the draft wars, they burnt black orphanages. They burnt and lynched black people. Here, he just said they burnt color boarding houses. Listen again.
From 4th, the rioters are attacking colored boarding houses, robbing them and setting them on fire.
From 21st, the mob have just broken open gun store on 3rd Avenue and are arming.
It's a great movie, though. But that's the reality, man. That's the reality that I'm trying to show you, though. So let's go back. Put my face up for this. So let's go back in, actually forward in time to 1943 with the Zoot Suit Wars. Let's go back to that time now. Here's some pictures before I go there. See? Mexicans are some cool, suave brothers and sisters, man. But look how close these Mexicans are as far as the dress fashions like the so-called blacks. Same thing. You see these migrants coming over here. They have the polo jackets. The migrants have the hat backwards. The migrants have the latest jeans on. They got their little phones. Same damn thing. And they think they're different from so-called black people. But you don't see the Chinese. They were in this country. You didn't see them with their zoot suits. They put the Chinese in concentration camps at one point, but they weren't dressing and flashing like so-called Negroes. Why is that? Because Hispanics and so-called blacks, your brothers and sisters. Your brothers and sisters. And that hate don't go to the Chinese, Japanese, and East Indians. That hate goes to you so-called blacks and Latinos. You could try to deny it. You could try to fight it off. It's just not going to happen. Let's go back to the story now. It's just not going to happen, man. Go back a little bit.
Chucos. But the suits were heavy on fabric, and because of the Second World War, there was a rationing of wool and other materials.
We're going to tighten our belts another notch for war.
At the time, many people saw those who wore zoot suits during the war as un-American. Then in June 1943, the riots broke out. White uniformed servicemen walked the streets of Los Angeles, attacking and beating up Latino, Black, and Filipino men wearing the zoot suits. Those racist mobs would eventually include off-duty police officers and plain old civilians, and it went on for a week. Newspapers at the time blamed what they called Latino hoodlums and gangsters for the violence. Now,
isn't that what's happening now? Isn't that what's happening now? I want to show you another clip. Isn't that what's happening now? Look at this clip with the New York City police officers. Check this out. I'm gonna show you another clip. Check this out.
In December, the NYPD was alerted the brutal Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua had made it across the border into New York. Their savage, bloody crimes are similar to the MS-13 gang.
Gun in their head. Gun put to their head. That's how brazen they were.
Armed robberies and vicious beatings by a violent gang going after their cash and their credit cards. They also allegedly had broad daylight shootings with rival gangs.
First of all, the NYPD says the criminal network is so far comprised of mostly Venezuelan migrants, and the crimes that they are committing here in the city can not only physically hurt you, but they can also wipe you out.
They're trying to break down the system. They're trying to break down the system. They're trying to create so much fear because every migrant that comes over the border is not a gang member. You got certain migrants who are coming. I believe the majority of the migrants that are coming over the border, they just want to take advantage of an opportunity to broaden their horizons, to fill their pockets, to eat, to live comfortably, to achieve what they see on TV as far as the American dream, which they're going to find out is not much of a dream. But the point is, they're trying to instill in the minds of Americans that destruction is at their doorsteps, at everyone's doorsteps, which to a degree on another level, in a whole different subject matter, is true. But at the same time, the hatred, the fear, and the spirit of war is being designed and created all over in the country, and it's pertaining towards blacks and Hispanics. In this case, it's Hispanics. You see where I'm going with this? Because this is not hard to figure out at all. This is not hard to figure out at all. But we see what's going on, man. We see it. We see it clear as day.
Financially.
There's new concerns about a wider criminal network involving migrants.
All right, police are linking them to a string of moped robberies here in the city, and they say they're being recruited by kingpins.
Closer look at how this operation allegedly works.
What are we looking at?
NYPD Inspector Nicholas Fiore and the Crimes Against Persons Unit have their hands full with a surge in crimes they say are being committed by a crew of Venezuelan migrants.
Damn commercial. I'm not going to stay long on it anyway. I don't want to get a flag, but you get what I'm saying. I'm not saying that crime is not running rampant in New York City and various countries. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the racism and the history of racism has always been here, number one. And number two, it's repeating itself all over again in the case of migrants and Americans wanted to be patriots. That's what I'm trying to show you. It's not going away either. You gotta have the chaos. There you go. That's exactly what you gotta have. Order through chaos, it tells you in Behold the Pale Horse. And that's exactly what it's gonna spill. That's exactly where we're going. But this is not hard to see. You know, so the zoot suit thing, you know, that's major. That's major. And again, a lot of the migrants, look at what they're wearing. They look just like Latinos that's been here for a minute, who grew up here, like Puerto Ricans. They like the first. And you know what, believe it or not, a lot of the other Hispanics hate Puerto Ricans. Puerto Ricans are like the dogs of the Latin world or anything associated with the Latin world. They're not in Latin America. They have an island for themselves, but they're like, Puerto Ricans are very much looked down upon. Even from certain Dominicans. Certain Dominicans do not want to be confused with being Puerto Ricans. But from our studies and our research, we believe that Puerto Ricans are the main head tribe of the northern tribes. That's what we believe. And nobody moves or act like a Puerto Rican. I don't care what anyone says. No one out of all the so-called Hispanic groups has the energy and the fire of who we call Ephraim. Not any of them. Not any of the other tribes. Not that I'm downing the other tribes, Hispanic tribes. They're beautiful people and they are people. They're beautiful people and they are people. But the problem with them is that the religions and the lies have saturated their minds so much that it's very difficult to reach them. Very difficult to reach them. And that's going to be a problem down the line. But at some point, they're going to have to face reality of what this country is really talking about and accept the fact that white Jesus will not save them. Will not save them. They're going to have to accept this reality. And a lot of them, they struggle with that. They struggle with that reality. They struggle with the truth that that so-called white people do not respect them. They do not respect them. And it's sad, but, you know, hey, they're going to wake up, though. They're going to wake up.
80 years later, LA County is apologizing.
The Zoot Suit riots have been one of Los Angeles's most shameful moments in our history.
I am a classic car driver and a vintage enthusiast. We are so grateful that this is being recognized and are all in favor of denouncing the injustice as we see it, targeting Chicanos, Blacks, Filipinos, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to be heard and seen and the opportunity to speak for the past, present, and future, as my great-grandfather was a Zoot Suiter and experienced the riots.
After those riots, the Zoot Suit style mostly disappeared. Mostly.
A lot of our customers come to wear Zoot Suits because it's part of their culture and it's part of their tradition. Their fathers wore Zoot Suits. Their grandfathers wore Zoot Suits.
Isn't that something? Isn't that something? They made it part of their culture. And in the beginning of the video, it said it started up in Harlem. And a lot of Chicanos, you see them still wearing these Cheech and Chong style hats and even the pants, the khakis and so on and so forth, man. Isn't that something?
Their great-grandfathers were pachucos back in the day.
Look at the car behind them. Look at the car. Does that remind you of something?
And they know all about, you know, the troubles and everything.
Look at the car again. Who's flashy with their cars like this car here? The so-called brothers in California with the fancy paint jobs and the old cars being brought back to life and the flashy colors. Who does that? So-called Blacks and Latinos. Black West Indians have beef patties Hispanics, they have empanadas. Blacks have rice and beans or rice and peas. So-called Hispanics, they have rice and beans, man. Or Royce con pollo, chicken and rice.
Everything that their family went through.
Vanessa Estrella's family has been selling authentic zoot suits in Fullerton, California since 1978.
It's also a feeling that you get, proudness. You know, you feel proud to be able to represent the culture and the people that.
Goddamn shame. Shame, shame, shame. That's what's coming to this country. Lots and lots of shame. But I'm not going to be long, man. I just wanted to just, touch on that and, show you that. But, the same thing in America with the so-called blacks. Check it out. See, the poor had to enlist. Those old Irish slave catchers and overseers, they had to pay, but they couldn't afford to pay. But their rich brother, who are Edomites, the Irish being Edomites too, said that's unfair. They have the money to live. We don't have the money, so we're being drafted into war, and we're already poor for those lowlives, those ninjas who we don't care if they remain slaves or not.
They felt that it fell on them in a disproportionate or unfair way.
From the bottom rung of white society, Irish immigrants, the poorest New Yorkers, had a long and violent history with the only group below them.
Listen closely. The only group below them.
African Americans. Fears that newly freed blacks would pour into the city and take jobs from whites reached a boiling point. For New York's large Irish population, the draft turned friction into fire.
The fear was that many people saw that draft as, oh, you are now forcing us to fight for the freedom of Black Americans. And in New York City, a riot breaks out.
The protesters quickly gained speed, first setting fire to the draft office, then lashing out at the wealthy and businesses that employed blacks. Within hours, the chaos reached the factory of piano maker William Steinway.
Monday, terrible excitement throughout the city.
Today, his diary provides a chilling account.
Resistance to the draft.
Steinway is a brand of piano that's not lightweight. and he documented what happened. I didn't even know they were in New York at that time, at least.
Rows of buildings on 3rd Avenue burning down.
When the mob arrived on their doorstep, Steinway's brother, Charles, paid them off.
Charles gave the ringleaders $20 to $40 in money and won a check for $30.
That was kind of a lot of money, wasn't it?
It was. I couldn't put it in terms of their pay per day, but it was a lot.
But money...
See, and you're going to have that in these last days. You're going to have whites against whites. So here you have Irish, who are considered the ninjas, the N-word of Europe. And even in that opening scene, when I started the video off, it said they attacked the ones who were lower or below them, which was so-called blacks. So this is how the whites who are the non-Irish whites viewed Irish, and in certain cases, Italians. This is how the white Anglos viewed so-called white Anglos. I'm sorry about that. Viewed the Irish. And you're going to have situations where you're going to have white on white crime, like on as far as how the country's going. I can't wait till this movie comes out called Civil War. I got to check this out. Check that out. But this is very serious. Look at this.
Could not subdue the rage.
Soldiers with cannon marching down 3rd Avenue.
All business in the upper part of the city suspended. Negroes chased everywhere and killed when caught.
Look at that. Look at that. They don't talk about this in history. In the movie Gangs of New York, they just a small clip of what happened. But you heard what he just said. Play it again.
Soldiers with cannon marching down 3rd Avenue.
All business in the upper part of the city suspended. Negroes chased everywhere.
Negroes chased everywhere. Now they call today or this month Black History Month. You think they're going to show this? You think they're going to talk about this? Or are you going to get some old BT type history? Some Medina type history?
And killed when caught.
A lynch mob roamed the city. A black orphanage was burned to the ground. They murdered anyone, black or white, who tried to intervene.
It's an example of how tenuous the notion of what the Civil War really was about. For some, they still felt the entire war was only about bringing the Union together, not doing anything for African Americans.
Lincoln ordered federal troops, 4,000 straight from the horrors of Gettysburg, to quell the riots. Just as quickly as hysteria had engulfed the city, it was displaced by a chilling quiet. The final death toll, 120.
Unbelievable. Crazy. Crazy. But it makes you think where we're going. It makes you think where we're going. All this money being sent to the Ukraine, all this money for years being sent to Israel. Meanwhile, America is falling apart. Racial tension is being, in certain cases, orchestrated, but in certain cases, just coming to pass because of stress and pushback and lies and just hypocrisy. Then you can't afford to make ends meet. How long can this go on before we see actions like this in this country? How far can you stretch until you're just financially busted? I was watching the news earlier today. They said UPS is laying off like 3% of their workforce. UPS. And we know the banks, they're laying off like crazy and they're just not reporting it. Amazon, they've been laying off for quite some time. They're not reporting on a lot of things happening in this country. And it's for a reason. They want to keep you crazy. They want to keep you out of your mind. They want to keep you believing in the lies. But at some point, they cannot keep hiding this and kicking this can down the block. They can't. At some point, it's going to catch up with them. The Most High says in 2 Ezra 15, verse 15, for the sword and their destruction draweth near. For the sword and their destruction draweth near. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. 16 verse says, for there shall be sedition among men. Sedition is rebellion against the powers that be. In this case, this government. For there shall be sedition among men, invading one another. And they should not regard their kings nor princes. They're not going to respect authority. They're not going to care who's president. They're not going to care who's mayors and senators. It says they should not regard their kings nor their princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. meaning it's going to come to pass. What a man wants in the negative is going to come to pass. 17th verse says, a man shall desire to go into a city and should not be able. A man shall desire to go into a city and should not be able to. Why? Because of riots and hatred and violence. 18th verse, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and they shall be afraid. Something to think about, just something on my mind. Please like and share the video. Please dislike or don't share the video. Either way, please smash that thumbs up or down button. Show our brothers some love. I'll see you brothers again tonight. Shalom.